Welcome. In this tutorial, we're going to take a look at Adobe Premiere CS3. This is an older version of Premiere. Currently, the most recent, I think, is CS5, but this is the version that I have access to, so let's take a look. I'm going to click New Project, and I have a number of preset options that I can choose. I'm going to go ahead and go with this standard 48 kilohertz, and I notice that 29.9 frames per second, 720 by 480 frame size, and this works well for me because I'm working with a video camera, Sony Handycam, that shoots 720 by 480. If you're shooting with a HD camera that's shooting widescreen, then you could go ahead and choose the widescreen preset here, and I like to use the 48 kilohertz. Notice that you can choose the location where you will save your project files, and if you like to have it in Premiere, that's fine. I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder on my desktop. And I'll just browse for that folder and put my project location there. I'm also going to give my project a name. And I'm going to click OK. This is the Premiere workspace. Notice that up here in the upper right corner will be our viewer, and we can view, play the playhead. The play and stop toggle is here. You can move forwards and backwards. This is a viewer for looking at clips. We'll take a look at that. Down here we have our timeline, and then we have some tabs here which gives us some options to access effects or our history. Let's start by capturing video from a video camera. I'm using a mini DV Handycam, and it's going to be connected through a FireWire. Once it's connected, I go to the File drop-down menu, and I can click this option, which is Capture. And it opens up a capture window for me. It's automatically detected my camera, so now I can use these buttons to control my camera. I clicked rewind, and now I'll go ahead and click play. And just like other video editors we've used, we're able to scrub through our tape. Once you find the place in the tape that you'd like to start capturing, you can go ahead and click this red button here, which will start the recording. Note you can monitor the duration of your capture, and we can change the name of the clip from untitled, and we'll give it a name once we're done capturing. You can add a large majority of clip data, description, scene, shot, etc. You can also use this to log shots. Okay, now I'm done. We're going to click stop, and it'll give me the option to rename my clip. You're able to log in and out points on the tape. That way you can view the whole tape, click an in point, click an out point, log a shot, and create a whole shot list of logged shots, and then later do what's called a batch capture, so that you can capture all of the footage at one time, footage that you've determined the in and out points for the different shots. I'm not going to go into that today, but if you're interested in batch capture, there's a lot of documentation about how to do that, and it's an extremely useful tool when you have many tapes and lots of footage. Sort of the initial phase in bringing a lot of footage in is to log the tapes, choose the shots that you want, and then do a batch capture in. We're just doing a manual capture, So once you have finished capturing and you clicked stopped, it pops this pop over open, and you can determine a clip name by just typing that in. Again, you can add scene, shot, different notes, but the clip name is going to help us to recognize it in our library bin area. I'm going to click OK. And notice that over here we now have hens.mov, which is the footage that we've just captured from the camera. That's pretty much it for capturing. You capture as many clips as you like. I like to capture small clips that are in somewhat workable chunks already, but if you feel like it, you could, in essence, capture the entire tape into just one clip and then bring it onto your timeline and manually edit it. I'm going to close the capture window. So I have my hens.mov. Next, I'm going to import some previously existing clips that I have in a folder titled Assets on my desktop. So I'm going to again go to File and click Import. This time I'm going to choose these 3 clips that are .movs as well. They're from a 1937 instructional film that I found on the archive.org, and I will import these. And now notice over here I have access to the hens MOV that I captured, as well as the 3 clips that I have gotten from archive.org. Now's a good time to file save. I'm running Mac OS X Lion, and this is an older version of Premiere. So I do find that I have a bit of an issue. I'm not sure if it's 64-bit compatibility or what the issue is, but next I'm going to show you how to grab a clip and pull it onto the timeline. I just click on it and pull it down. Now when I do that on this machine, I get this issue where the timeline turns red and I can't really see the different tracks. You probably will not encounter this issue. If you do, let me know. I'd be curious to hear what machine you're running and where this error is coming from. Notice that once I let go of the clip, that it drops on the timeline. Let's see if I can shrink this a bit. Great. That way I'm able to see. What I have here is a chunk of video on video track 2, and the associated audio, which is locked to this chunk of video, is now on audio track number 4. I'm going to grab a hold of this clip and pull it down. Once again, I'm getting that issue. Certain areas in my workspace will be red, which you will not see on your instance, but we'll try to work through this. This clip, when I click on it, it gives me some info. It gives me a duration. It's about 10 seconds in length. Notice I've got the timeline time code up here at the top, and the first thing I'm going to do is toggle this slider just a little bit, that way I can see more of my timeline. Now I'm going to grab a hold of this and give about maybe 8 seconds lead time, I guess. Next I'm going to pull another clip onto my timeline. Get that same issue. I'll grab a third clip, which is the video that I shot of the hens. I'll pull that in. And finally, I'll pull the third clip in. Great. So now if we take a look, I have 3 clips. I can put the playhead over a clip by grabbing hold of the playhead knob here at the top and just pulling it across the timeline, scrubbing. And of course, as the playhead is over the top of a clip, then we're able to view the video up here in the project viewer. When I click on a clip over here in my bin and double click on it, I'm able to take a look at my clip in this viewer over here. So this viewer is specifically for clips that are still in your library in the bin. This viewer over here is the viewer for your actual timeline. The next step is to look at how we trim and crop, and in essence, edit a clip. The way that I like to do it, I find the place in the clip that I'd like to make a split. I then down here with this tool set can choose this tool here, which is my razor tool, and I can just go right over the top of where my playhead is and click down, and then I have to remember to go back over here and choose my arrow tool again, the selection tool. Notice that it put a split right where my timeline was. I use the timeline like this just to give me a rough guide of exactly where it is I want to cut. The razor tool will cut anywhere on the clip that you overlay, and I can just click here and it'll put the split there. And notice as I move the razor tool up on top on the timeline, I get a small gray marker that tells me where I am in on the timeline, so I am able to use that as a ruler. I just like to use the playhead, that way I can scrub through and find the exact frame up here in the viewer where I'd like to put my split. Once you've made the splits, and remember, go back and choose your selection tool. And now this piece of the clip is now a separate entity from what was there previously. Now that we've made the cut, we can start to move this clip around as its own entity on the timeline where it was previously connected to this MOV right here. So using the razor tool to put a split in the clip, and then if you want to keep the element that you just split out, you can move it around on the timeline and edit it as you see fit. And if you want to delete it, just select it and click delete. And now what I've in essence just done is trim off the first number of seconds off of my clip. Next, I'm going to grab my second clip here. My first clip is good. I've given it about 10 or 8 seconds lead time, and that's where I'm going to put a title at the beginning. So we'll leave that for now. My first clip's then going to play for the first 10 seconds, and then this is my second clip here. Now, I'm going to put a fade transition between the two. And to do that in Premiere, what we're going to do is I'm going to grab it. We've got this red bug again. And I'm going to overlap my two clips. So I'll put my playhead here, and I'll hit my space bar to start playing. Now, as the playhead went over the top of these two clips, what happens is that it will now play the clip that is highest up, or the one that's on top here, in the on the timeline, which is the video track 2. What I want to do is put a fade in between this Rooster Crow MOV to this second clip, the farmer opening the door. I've overlapped the two for about, where are we? About a second. I'm going to zoom in on them a little bit. And now I can go over to my effects tab here, and I have audio effects, audio transitions, video transitions. Excuse me, I'll grab the transition, and then I'm looking for a cross dissolve between the two. I will now just click down on the cross dissolve and pull it right onto the clip that I would like to fade into. I've double clicked on the transition, and up here I can start to see, I can go over the top of the transition in the timeline. I can do the same thing by the playhead down here at the bottom, and it'll show me what the transition is going to look like. It'll give me the duration, which I can change. And I notice that down here, where the transition is applied to this top clip, I have a little bit of an overhang between the bottom source, which is this bottom clip, and the top source. So what I did was pull this clip over just a bit so that I was sure that for the area of the transition, these two clips fully were overlaid. What was happening before, this clip was moved over just a bit and the transition was still playing when the clip finished. And if there's nothing on the clip, on the time, if there's nothing on the timeline where the playhead hits, it will show black. So what it did was it dropped off into black while my fade in was still fading. So in essence, what you need to do is have the two clips fully overlapping for the amount of space that you have your transition playing. Now you notice here there's a red line at the top. That's actually not part of this OS 10 bug that we're seeing with the older Adobe products and the new Mac Lion operating system. What this is indicating is that for the length of this clip, for the length of the transition, and for the length of this clip, Adobe needs now to render this portion of the video into its memory before it can give us a correct playback. Now you can scrub the slider and get an idea of what's happening with your transition, but we do need to render this area. I've got this slider right here, and what I'm going to do is just shrink, grab one end of it, click down, and I'm going to shrink. What is selected by this selection area, this slider, when I go up to Sequence, drop-down menu at the top, and I click Render Work Area, then it will render that portion of the timeline for me. And once it's rendered, it will turn green. And now I can put my playhead up here, and when I hit the spacebar, I'll get the full playback. And I was able to preview my new transition. I'm going to increase this area back on the timeline so I can take a look. I'm going to do the same thing with my other clips. Now that I have the clips overlapping, I am going to just go over here to my dissolves and put that right on the clip. Notice now this area needs to be rendered again. And I'll do the same thing at the end here. I'll just grab another dissolve. Great, and now I will shrink this back down so I can take a look at the full area. I have my first clip transitioning into a second, transitioning into a third, transitioning into a fourth. And so we start to weave our clips together and then suture them together with transitions and different types of effects. I'm going to click Save. And I'm going to grab my slider area and just select my whole project length. And again, I'll go to Sequence and render the work area. So we've brought in clips. We've moved them around on the timeline. We've taken a look at the razor tool so we can trim and crop our clips. We've taken a look at the need to overlap clips on the timeline so that transitions and effects, or specifically so that transitions can be applied. Now we're going to take a look at bringing in a still image onto the timeline. I'm going to click File and Import. And I have a JPEG here called eggs, and I'll click Import. My JPEG is now imported into my library, into the bin here. I'm going to grab a hold of it and just drag it onto the timeline. When I double click on my image, I can take a look up here. I see that it's 5 seconds in duration. What I can do is I can grab a hold of the end and I get this nice kind of red arrow icon, and I can stretch out the duration. Oh, it looks like it only came in at 1 second. So I'm going to make the duration more like 10 seconds. And once again, I just rolled over the edge, clicked down my mouse button, and then drug it out to increase the duration. I'm going to increase the view. Stick my playhead roughly at about a second here, and I'm just going to scoot my image over. And now I have about a second overlap between my final clip and this still image. And I'm going to grab another dissolve and just add that right to the top. And I'll click Save. And I will render my work area. I'll zoom the view in, or zoom the view out a bit, and now I'll take a look between my last clip, the transition, and into the still image.
Farmer Brown closes the chicken house door.
Ooh, I'm getting some feedback there. So you can grab video clips from your library, and you can also import and then just pull image assets from your library bin up here down onto the timeline. And you can drag your image element around as you would a clip. You could also apply video effects and transitions onto a still image in the same way that you will a clip. Next, let's add some titles. I'm going to go to my menu at the top, which there's a title drop-down menu, and I'm going to choose New Title. And I have a couple of options, some on the screen capture and some not. A default still, a default roll, and a default crawl. I'm going to choose a default still, and I'm going to give this a name. Intro still. And it pops open a window much like the capture window, except this window now enables me to create my still title. Notice up here at the top you have a number of title tools, alignment, creating different shapes. Down here you have some preset text types. I'm just going to click something like this. I click my cursor in the window, enter some text, and then I'm going to choose my selection tool so I can move it around in the space. Notice once I add text, I can select it much the same way you do text editors. And there's a number of properties here that you can change, everything from fonts to opacity, etc. Drop shadows, many properties that you can play with. Now I have edited my still title. I'm going to close this window up here at the top. And down here in the library now, I have my still added as a visual element that I can pull onto my timeline. So I'm going to grab my still, and I'm going to add this to the beginning of my timeline here. And there it is right there. My still has been dragged onto video track number 2. I'm going to extend it a bit. I'm going to grab it and then, let's see, I will zoom in. I'm going to grab this still and try to get it to overlap my clip by about that second. And then I will add a cross dissolve. Let's take a look. So once you've created a title, you'll be able to find it here in your library bin, and then you can drag it onto your timeline and utilize it just like you would an image element. By default, these things are transparent, so you can grab a credit and pull it over the top of a clip if you want the text to show up on top of your clip. Or what I did here was had no image or clip underneath my credit, and that way what I see is a black background. Now I'd like to have a couple of seconds of black at the outset of my video, and then what I want is this credit to pop right up. I am going to add a cross dissolve right here at the beginning. That way I get that nice fade effect into my credit, and then it fades into my clip. So a fade in, fade out, and I've left a couple of seconds of black here at the beginning of my timeline. Notice the red is telling me where I still need to render. The green, that stuff's already been rendered on the timeline. Now let's create a different kind of title. This one we'll do I go to title, new title. We'll do a default role. It prompts me to name my title, and I'll call this end roll. And once again, I get my title editor. This time I'm going to open my assets. I have a text file in here with credits for attribution for the assets that I'm using from Flickr and the archive. So the audio, let's see, grab the text, drop it in here. Selection tool, I'll get this all lined up. Now I'm going to change this font size down to smaller. And here we go. I'm going to just copy and paste in the credits. Looks like that's going to be much too large. There we go. So I changed my font size to about 30%. Now I can use this slider to take a look and see what it's going to look like. Once I'm happy with the effect, I can just go ahead and shut this window. And now I have this, it has a little film strip icon. This is my credit animation that I can now pull over onto my timeline just like I did with the intro still. Note that I can double click on the credit, either of these credits over here in the bin, and when I do that it opens my editor back up, so I can always get back in there and edit the credit if I need to. I'm going to drop that credit, this rolling credit, right here over the top of my still image. And here's my end roll right here over the top of my still image. Now the roll itself, it's shorter than that still image that I brought into my timeline. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a hold of the end here, and remember I expanded my still image out. Now I'm going to just collapse this down, and I'll leave maybe a second or two at the end so I can grab a transition and put that on the end just so it fades down to black at the very end of my project. Now's a good point. I'm going to render. So I go to Sequence, Render the Work Area. So I've rendered my title. Now I can take a look. Here we go. And I'll zoom back out so I can see my whole timeline now. So we've added a couple of different kinds of titles to the project, both still and animated. And again, the way that Premiere works is that it creates an asset right here in your library that then you can access, pull that down onto the timeline and move it around into the space that you'd like to put it on your project. I'm going to save. Next, let's bring some external audio in. And the way that we do that, we'll import it just like we do other assets. I choose import. Here's an MP3, the Big Bill Brunsey, and I'll say import. And just like all of our other assets, we now have an audio file here in our library bin. So I'm going to grab a hold. Let's see, where's the beginning? Here we go. I'm going to grab a hold and just pull that right onto that first audio track. So now I have my MP3 on audio track 2, and I have the audio for my clips down here on audio track 4. Now that I have my MP3 on my timeline, I see that the MP3 is about 3 minutes long. My video sources are only about 1 minute and 12 seconds long. And so here on the timeline, when I get out to a couple minutes, note that all we have left is this MP3. I don't want the audio playing for my full video. I just want it to play during the intro credits. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my razor tool, and I'm going to put a split right about the end of the transition in to that rooster crowing. And similarly, I'd like the music to play during the end credits, so I'm just going to put a razor split here, right about where the end credits are, and then have it stop right as I fade to black. Actually, maybe I'll have it stop a little bit after we've faded to black. Now I will click my selection tool. I'll grab that tail piece, which is the rest of the MP3 that goes out to the 3 minutes in length, and I'm just going to delete that portion. And I'm also going to grab this chunk that's in the middle between the first clip of audio that I put a split in, and this last clip of audio right here. So I'll cut out the middle. Now I have audio. I have audio at the end, and I have audio here at the beginning. Couple things. I'm going to zoom in a little bit on this chunk of audio. I'm going to grab audio transition, and I'm just going to grab this constant gain crossfade and have this fade in and fade out just by dropping those fades there. So I don't even really need this crossfade at the beginning because it fades in naturally on the MP3 track. So I'm going to select that fade and delete it. We'll just let it naturally fade in, and then it can fade out. Great. So once again, we can add transitions to our audio in the same way we did our video source. There is a line that goes across this audio track right here. It's a little yellow line. And when I click on it, I get that little up and down arrow next to my selection tool, and I can pull this a full yellow line down, and what that does is it enables me to increase or decrease the volume on the track. So when it's at 0 dB, that's the natural volume of the track, and basically I'm going to take this down a notch so it's not quite as loud, because the audio on the narration on the video clips is not as loud as the volume on this MP3 track. So let me take a listen now. So in this way we can change just by hovering over. There we go. You can change the total volume of a clip of audio on your timeline and start to get the mix that you're looking for between the different sources that you add on the audio tracks. So we've added video footage, both from the camera and imported previously existing video footage. We've used the clip tool or the razor tool to clip our. So we've added video footage, both from our camera and previously existing video. We've utilized the razor tool to trim and crop and create the clip lengths that we're looking for. We've brought in still images. We've applied transitions by overlapping audio and video sources, and then pulling transitions out of this library over here, which are our effects. We've added titles, and we've also added external MP3. Those are all the requirements for the assignment. Before we go, let's add a video effect just so we can take a look at the concept. I chose this drop-down video effects. I get a number of options, folders that have different types of effects. I'm going to choose magnify, and I'll pull this right over onto my clip, and I add it, and notice now I get this little in the center region here. I get this area that's magnified. An interesting effect. And once I've added my effect, now I need to render that whole area out. I'm going to click File, Undo, take that transition off, and you can start to play with the effect off. You can play with different effects over the top, added over the top of your clips to get the effect that you're desiring. I'm going to click save, and I'll zoom back out of my timeline. And there we go. We come in on music, over the top of our title, through transitions and into the different clips. That clip is weird. I'm going to zoom out. And this is a look at our finished project, our timeline. The project goes to about 1 minute and 12 seconds. We can see all of the different assets that we've brought into the bin, imported into our bin, and then brought from our bin down onto our timeline and edited together using transitions and multi-tracks. And we've created our end product, which now we're ready to export into its final file format. I'm going to click save one last time. And once I'm ready to export my final video project file, I go to File, Export, and this is the one I'm going to choose, the Adobe Media Encoder. The Media Encoder enables you to create a number of different files types. With cs3, you have the choice to create MPEG-2. You can export it out as QuickTime or into a .flv format, flash video, which is utilized for streaming on the web. I'm going to choose an MPEG-2. Be sure that both the video and the audio are exporting. You can take a look here, the summary. It's going to be 720 by 480, which is the source size, 29 frames per second. That's great. With good sounding audio, I can pull down here. There's a number of settings that I can work with, change, adjust. But the presets are going to be pretty good, I think, for this project. Once you've chosen MPEG, you can go ahead and click OK. It's going to ask you where you would like to save your file, and I'll just save it to my desktop. And depending on the length of your project, this may take a while. That's pretty much it for this tutorial in Premiere. We barely scratched the surface. There are a lot of other options and functionality in this product. There's lots of documentation and tutorials out there. In later versions of Premiere, when you export, you can choose MPEG-4 as an option. And once you get that final video file exported out, then remember the next step in the assignment is to upload it to YouTube. So if you have any questions, as always, get a hold of me and we'll do some troubleshooting. Otherwise, we'll see you in class, and that's it for this tutorial. Thanks for watching.